Hello, welcome back to another GM Philosophy Coffee Break Live at 1 p.m. It is great to be here, as usual, rocking the rock star today instead of the coffee. It is Friday, wubba lubba dub dub. We're talking about archers and shooting through melee units, friendly melee units. Do they incur penalties or not? I am wearing my official Friday gear. I am ready to rock and roll. I have some Discord D&D tonight running a session, so super pumped about that. We are ready to go. Pinned comment, join the Discord and download my ebook, The Ultimate Plot Randomizer, and join my email list. I see there are some people in the chat. Will you comment and let me know if you can hear me okay, just to make sure that we are good to go. Steven says, Friday started off looking good. Heck yeah. You too, Steven. Whispering Wisp says, I can. Heck yeah. Thank you very much, Whispering Wisp. Prophet Roll says, hear you, Peachy. Heck yeah. Excellent. Excellent. All right. So here's the question. When you have enemies and then you have friendlies engaged in melee with those enemies, but they are between the archer, or I guess in this case, it would be any ranged champion. Or any ranged, not champion, ranged character, champion, I think League of Legend term. But anyway, when they shoot and they're shooting like through the space occupied by the friendly character, do they incur a penalty? Is there a chance they hit the friendly? What happens in 5e? 5e is surprisingly silent about this. And someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I did a little research before firing this up just to make sure that I was right. And I'm pretty sure there is no official 5e ruling giving any negative, any like disadvantage, anything penalizing the archer in the situation, or giving a buff to the creature getting shot at. I don't think there's anything official in 5e. With that being said, I will refer back just for reference to 3E, which I've played in depth. There was a standard -4 penalty applied if you were shooting at an enemy, if you were an archer, and you did not have the feat precise shot, and you fire an arrow at an enemy that was within melee range of a friendly, not even the friendly was between you and them. Even if the friendly was on the other side, if they were engaged in melee with a friendly, you took a -4 penalty to your shot unless you had the feat precise shot, which was why if you planned to do any ranged attacks at all, precise shot was always the first feat you got. Because as long as you had precise shot, you could shoot without a penalty. And I always ruled this: if you missed your shot and you didn't have precise shot, there was a percentage chance you hit a friendly. That was how I always ruled it in 3rd edition. We had a significant amount of friendly fire go on with new archers. In fact, it was so much so that when they would hire a new NPC hireling, they would basically say, do you have precise shot? I.e., have you trained enough with a bow to not shoot your own people in combat? And if they said no, they'd be like, give me that bow. Here's a dagger. Live through this battle. Get yourself precise shot. In other words, we're going to train you more before we give you a bow. Because we had NPCs just like shooting PCs in the back with arrows because they sucked. I'm going to come to some of these comments here. Steven says cover rules apply to the target. Half cover if they are the same size or 3/4 if your ally is larger. Steven, I'm very interested. Is that in the official 2024 player handbook? And if so, can you give me the page number? Or is that your interpretation? Is that how you handle it? I'm very curious about that because, first of all, I want to know if I'm wrong about this. If there's an official ruling in the player's handbook, which there might be because I haven't read the whole thing, I would like to know about it. Secondly, if that's your personal take on it, I don't disagree with you. I do not disagree with you at all. I think that's a great way to handle it, to be honest. But I'm curious about what that is exactly. Prophet Roll says, personally, I think there's plenty of room in the 5-foot space for an ally to be out of the line of fire. So actually, I think that is why they took out precise shot, because it is a 5-foot range. Because, there's a lot of room to be like, the archer, if they're good with their bow and they're sighting their enemy, when the friend dodges back from attack and then the archer fires, I feel like there's room for that. So Prophet Roll, I actually think that what you're saying has a lot of merit, and I think that that's a good way to handle it. Matt Powers says, I'd say cover rules apply, but every ranger takes sharpshooter, which negates the cover rules. Okay, So that is true too. Now, when you say cover rules apply, once again, I'm very interested if the 2024 player handbook specifically talks about cover rules, like basically applying to this. I'm really interested if I'm wrong. I think I'm right. I don't think the cover rules mention this, but I want to know. But with that being said, Matt Powers, I do not disagree with you. Stephen Lewis says it's how I use cover rules. Nothing officially states. Okay, gotcha. I don't disagree. I think that that's a good way to handle it. To be really honest, I've heard we talked about this in the Discord. By the way, link is in the pinned comment. Join my Discord if you haven't. Be awesome. Join my Discord. It's free, and we talk about awesome stuff like this all the time. Now, with that being said, so Stephen, I don't disagree. I've heard it suggested that maybe disadvantage should be given to the archer. I think that's too much of a penalty. I don't agree with that. I think that feels bad to give disadvantage to the archer in this situation. What I would prefer to happen is I'd prefer to give the archer a choice. You can either take disadvantage or you can shoot, but if you miss, there's a 50% chance you hit a friendly, and then they roll percentiles. That's what I would do, to be honest. That I think that's better than giving them disadvantage. Give them a choice, because then it's like, are they going to take their time? Taking their time gives them disadvantage. They might not get the shot they want, whatever, right? Steven says, or no, I'm sorry, Garrick says things are by their nature confused in a fight. Yeah, no, that's true. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of chaos. Garrick says, don't underestimate confusion. No, totally. I agree. I agree. Steven says it really makes players who use range have to move around to find a good shot. Okay, no, that's true. So now there is a question here of like, is it doing too much to impose penalties for this? I think this is a really good question. You know, there's a part of me that wants to say, don't bother with it. There's a part of me that wants to say that. I kind of feel like I don't. So to date, for example, in my core group, we've gone up to level 8. They're at level 8 right now. Been in many, many battles. I've never once, and they have had many fights where there were ranged fighters shooting at enemies, and the enemies were within melee range of a friendly. And I have never once given the ranged units a penalty for this, because, and I guess this is my official take on it. I don't think there's a reason to do it. I kind of feel like it's too much to give ranged units a penalty for this. In 3rd edition, it was part of the rules. There was a feat you could take to basically get you at neutral ground. So if you were untrained, yes, -4 penalty. If you took precise shot, okay, now you don't really have to worry about it. In 5th edition, there isn't even that. You just don't have to worry about it, I guess. Maybe, well, actually, if they're not proficient with the weapon, they don't get to add the proficiency bonus. So if they're proficient with the weapon, should they just be able to shoot without a penalty? I'm interested to hear what you guys think about that. Let me know what you think about that. I'm kind of leaning that way. I don't necessarily like to penalize my players for this. Okay. Steven says, I find the boost to AC that the enemies get to be sufficient instead of a penalty. So that's another way you can handle it, is you can give them a bonus to armor class. You can give them I've heard it suggested you give the enemy a +2 to armor class if they're engaged in melee with a friendly, or if there's a friendly in the line of fire. Even if they're engaged with a friendly and they're not in the line of fire, then maybe you wouldn't give the armor class boost. I think actually this is probably better than like giving a penalty to the archer. It's just, it feels bad. It's like, my whole job is to be an archer. Okay, getting fight, gonna shoot. Oh, you have disadvantage. Why? Because you have a friendly in the way and you don't want to shoot him in the back of the head. It's like, okay, I don't know. It just feels bad to me. Prophet Roll says there are situations where a melee character steps in front of a target. Should the ranged player have a penalty? Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. There's situations where a melee character. Do you mean a friendly or an enemy? Because I think that matters. Steps in front of a target. Should the ranged player have a penalty? It also makes sharpshooter much more appealing. So, Stephen, that is really true. That's super true. And so that's actually a really good point, because I hate to make rulings or do things that take away from the value of stuff players can get. That feels bad too. In a way, that feels worse. If the person who took sharpshooter is standing next to the person who doesn't have sharpshooter and they both perform exactly the same, that feels bad to the player who has sharpshooter, no doubt. With that being said, sharpshooter also does apply to cover, but cover covers a wide range of things beyond having friendlies in the melee zone, right? So that's a thing. And I think there's an argument to be had for that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just playing devil's advocate for that. Prophet Rule says if the archer is 60 feet away and an ally moves in the way, they can't do much about it. No, you're right. They can't do much about it. I mean, the archer can't. It is what it is. Prophet Rule also said there are situations where a melee character steps in front of a target should the ranged player have a penalty. Okay, so that's okay. So are they stepping in front of them intentionally? Right? I saw this question posed in the Discord. If an enemy steps in front of another enemy for the purpose of providing cover, for example, the barbarian steps in front of the spellcaster to shield them from arrows, should they treat it as cover? If so, then what Stephen Lewis is saying is correct, because cover will exist if your friendly melee unit, is in the line of fire. That's also going to provide cover. So if a player character, unless it's going to be an action to provide cover, like they're going to take the dodge action, take the provide cover action. I don't know. So anyway, yeah. Nerf McCringle says, that's a funny name. I like that. Penalty on the shooter puts the burden on the archer to make his difficult shot and not the target to dodge it. I see it similar to difficult terrain in a way. Okay, let me make sure I understand this. Penalty on the shooter puts the burden on the archer to make his difficult shot and not on the target to dodge it. I think what you're saying, Nerf, is that you're in favor of imposing maybe a penalty on the shooter because the burden is on the shooter to hit the target. I think that's what you're saying. And I don't disagree with you, really. I don't disagree. I'm trying to come to a final conclusion. As of yet, I never impose this penalty on players. Now, if there's a cover situation, someone's hiding behind a brick wall, I treat that differently than if there are friendly melee units in the way. That's what I've always done. Dungeons & 20 says, just stopping by to say hey, then heading off to my game with you. Oh, hey, William, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Have fun at your game. Roll some D100s for me. Iskandar the Great says, I don't think the friendly versus enemy should matter if they're trying to hit a specific target behind the obstruction. I agree with that. I don't think it should matter. If you're going to give cover for friendlies or enemies, then it should go both ways. I agree with that. I think you're right. Prophet Roll says, if allies in the way give cover penalties, I'd make smart monsters use the melee characters as meat shields. Could work both ways, but still seems off. So you're right. No, that would be the way it would happen. And smart monsters, I think, would do that. The question is, should it matter? I think size category also plays a part. And I think Stephen Lewis mentioned that. I'm pretty sure Stephen mentioned that about size categories. I think that if a large monster stands in front of a medium monster, that's a completely different situation than if a small monster stands in front of a large monster, right? But then again, in saying that, I'm acknowledging that cover matters with units. So I guess as I go along and I talk about this, maybe I'm agreeing more with Steven as I go, that giving cover is perhaps the best way to deal with it. Let's see here. Nerf McCringle says yes. Okay, so yes to the penalty should be on the shooter. John says, sorry, I'm late. Oh, hey, John, how's it going? No problem. We're just talking about this. Now, what are the cover? I'm actually interested in what I got to refresh myself. I'm going to look up the cover rules for 5e. 2024 5e cover rules. I want to make sure I'm right about this. All right, so there are 3 varying degrees of cover in D&D 5e. Each increasing level of cover comes with increasing benefits. Half or partial cover, plus 2 bonus to armor class and dexterity saving throws. 3/4 cover, plus 5 bonus to armor class and dex saving throws. Can also attempt to use the hide action. Total cover cannot be targeted. Okay, so here's a question. If a medium-sized friendly melee unit comes between the archer and their target, should they get half, 3/4, or total cover credit for that situation? I would like to hear what everyone thinks. I would give half or partial cover at most, is what I would do. Transcend RPG says, GMP channeling the dude today. Haha, where's your white Russian? I wish I had a white Russian right now. that's what I feel like that is totally a continuation of the vibe that I want to have. Although white Russian is I don't know, man. I don't know about the milk, maybe a margarita or a pina colada that also has cream in it, but it's more forgiving. I just feel like mixing spirits with milkiness is sometimes a sketchy thing. That's how I feel about it. Anyway, John says replacing my ceiling fan. Oh heck yeah, doing the real work. Heck yeah. That's no small task. Good on you. Good on you. Nerf says the reason I think penalizing a shooter with disadvantage is because they are choosing to shoot through a small window and take that risk. Missing their shot would be on them not being skilled enough. I don't disagree. I don't think you're wrong. Steven says depends on the size. I agree, but when it's medium and medium, I think half or partial cover. Giving 3/4 cover, I think, is too much. A +5 to armor class seems excessive. It seems really excessive. Profit Roll says the other question is, are they next to the archer's target or in the middle of both? If they're adjacent, maybe, but they're in the middle, then the arrow would arc over the ally. So the arcing, okay, here's the thing about arcing, and this was discussed in the Discord. By the way, link to join my Discord is in the pinned comment. Join it and be awesome. But anyway, so Profit Roll, here's the thing about the arc thing is there's a distance to take into account. So like, and it was suggested by people who actually practice archery in the Discord that when you shoot, so let's say you're 30 feet, 40 feet away, there really isn't an arc. Arcing over isn't really a thing. Arcing only happens at much longer distances, and then we're starting to talk about range, like penalties for range, right? So I don't know that the arcing, the like the arrow arcing, I don't know if that argument stands up when you're within 60 feet of your enemy. And to be honest, a lot of archery shots in D&D are taken within 60 feet, in my experience. Transcend RPG says, Margarita, now you're speaking my language. Heck yeah. Steven says, small gets 3/4. Okay, wait a minute. A small creature behind a medium creature gets 3/4. I think that's what you're saying. Medium or large get half. Okay, no, that checks out. Huge or gargantuan get no cover bonus. I would agree with that. I would agree. John says half cover. I agree. Steven says I also support margaritas. Heck yeah. John says, yeah, this isn't wanted. You can't bend your shots. Yeah, it's like, what's that movie with Angelina Jolie where she would curve the bullets? It was so zany. It was not great. It was not a great movie, but it was fun, I guess, to watch once. It wasn't as good as John Wick. But anyway, so yeah, Profit Roll says, yeah, close range, but I've shot low poundage bows, which arc even within 60 feet if you're not putting all the strength into it. Okay. No, that checks out. I've never shot a low poundage bows. My archery experience has mostly been with 50-pound draw compound bows. But if you're shooting a lower poundage bow, I could totally see that maybe that would be an arcing situation within 60 feet if you're not putting all the strength into it. I could see that. Interesting. What do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about Profit Roll's comment? I kind of feel like, so that sounds like a feat to me, right? You could still say disadvantage because harder to aim. So now, okay, now there we come back around where I wouldn't even want to give disadvantage for that, because disadvantage feels like disadvantage is a pretty serious penalty. I feel like this situation doesn't deserve such a serious penalty, but almost feel like skilled archer. I don't know if there's a right off the top of my head. I'm not sure if there's a feat. I'm gonna look it up. 2024 5e archery feats from the player's handbook. Are there feats that deal with this in the new? I don't know that there are any archery feats that deal with anything like this. So there's an archery fighting style feat. You gain +2 to attack rolls with ranged weapons. Maybe you could say if they have the archery fighting style feat, then they can arc it and avoid the cover, but only with melee units that are of the same size or smaller. A larger size melee unit will provide cover for a smaller one. You could say that. I could get behind that. Nerf says to arc your shot in short distances, cut damage output. That's true. It would cut your damage output. Jacob says if an arrow is arcing at 60 feet, 20 yards, that bow won't damage anything. So I think that's actually maybe a fair assessment. Maybe. I don't have enough experience to know if that would be true in real life. Jacob says may just bounce off the target. It may. Garrick says, just remember that all this complexity is going to complicate and slow down combat. Is it worth it? That's a super good question. No, I don't think it's worth it. So you want to have it decided before you go in, and you want to spend like half a second on it. John says, nope, that low poundage wouldn't be lethal, especially against armor. I actually agree. I kind of think I agree with that, especially against armor. Profit roll says, or make it the opposite of reckless attack. Make it do less damage, but ignore half cover. You could, yeah. So if you're arcing it, that I think that is a realistic way to do it. Nerf says, any sharp object in your eyes will hurt no matter the power. That's true. There's also, so there's another facet to this. Armor class is not just getting hit and bleeding. Armor class is also like, it's like the strain of dodging attacks, moving quickly. It's like it's almost like an extension of your of your athleticism, your ability to engage in combat for prolonged periods of time, exhaustion, running out of steam, etc. There is more to AC than just taking wounds. That's something else. So if you see an arrow coming, like, oh gosh, gonna dodge arrow, this might hurt your HP. I'm sorry, AC. HP. There's more to HP. Your health points are not just taking damage. It's also exhaustion. It's dodging attacks. It's the vigor you're putting into the combat and how it taxes you. So to nerf McCringle's comment, any sharp object in your eyes will hurt no matter the power, or any sharp object coming at your eyes, you will try to dodge it, thus incurring some potential HP damage. Even if you don't actually take damage from it, you're going to put in that energy to dodge it or whatever. Prophet says, Jonathan, no, not lethal, but you can deal 2 or 3 damage with a full strength bow when level 12 characters have 70 plus HP, so it doesn't really matter. That's true. John says, you don't like it, just take the feat that ignores cover. Yeah, you're talking about sharpshooter. We talked about that earlier. And so the question would be, okay, I guess what it really boils down to is, should melee units in the line of fire create cover? That's what it really boils down to. Because if so, sharpshooter becomes more beneficial, and it makes players feel good for having sharpshooter, which they should. And it imposes a slight penalty on people who don't have sharpshooter, but it's just not in the rule book, which is interesting. John says, yeah, but to shoot an eyeball is like an AC 30. That's true. Prophet says, I still think that there's enough room in a 5-foot space for the shot to have a clear target. I don't necessarily disagree. If I was playing in a game and that's how the GM ruled, I would not have a problem with it. KR Dragon says, considering that a creature doesn't fill up the square they stand in, it's decently reasonable to assume that one creature doesn't constantly obscure another. That is how I have to date run it in 5e. What you and Profit Roll are saying is exactly how I have run it. I am rethinking it now. I feel like Steven has made a good point about cover and the sharpshooter feat. But anyway, that's how I've been running it. Iskandar the Great says you should do a live or vid soon on called shots. That's actually a really good idea. I'm gonna make a note of that. I'm gonna put that in my notes. Called shots. Is there anything in the 2024 Players Handbook about called shots? I'm asking that because I am unaware if there is. I don't think there is. Garrick says the game is supposed to be fun. This is too complicated to be fun. Real cool works both ways. I'm sorry, Garrick. So I agree with you, but it's kind of fun to discuss it, right? It's fun for GMs to discuss it amongst themselves. It's like a fun thing, I think. Narf says it really depends how tactical you want to get. Line of sight makes movement more important. That's true. It does. And it does depend on how tactical you want to get. KR Dragon says, if I were to just throw out a possible rule, I would say if the shooter is shooting completely through a friendly square, the target gets half cover and a crit fail results in friendly fire. That's fair. I think that's a very fair ruling. John says 5-foot squares are abstracts. If the melee combatants were standing still, I'd agree. But when have you ever seen melee combatants staying perfectly still? I think that's true. So that's true. And that, I think, gives validity to the idea that there should not be a penalty, I think, because they're going to be constantly moving and the archer is going to find an opening when their friendly unit is not in the way. That, I think, that gives legitimacy to that argument. Into the Wind says creatures giving cover is in the SRD, at least by implication. For example, if a target is behind a creature that gives half cover and a tree trunk that gives 3/4 cover. Oh, okay. That would make it different. That would make it actually legit. Matt Powers says simple way to play is cover applies unless you have sharpshooter. No disadvantage on attacks unless within melee of enemy. No need for arcing shots and adding complexity. I don't disagree with that. KR Dragon says 3.5 had rules for this, right? Anyone remember them? Yes, I was actually talking about that earlier. 3rd edition and 3.5 had precise shot, which avoided there was always a -4 penalty that you would incur for shooting enemy units who were engaged in melee with friendly units, because there was a chance you'd hit them. So you incur the -4 penalty to avoid hitting them. And the idea was if you chose not to incur that penalty, then there was a percentage chance you hit your friends instead of your enemies. But by incurring that penalty, you avoid hitting your friendlies. And then you could take the feat Precise Shot, which would negate it. And that was always the first feat you took. And if someone didn't take Precise Shot and they tried to shoot melee, you would throw dice at them at the table until they took Precise Shot. Profit Roll says that's where the shooter would say duck or move. I wouldn't take a shot an ally is in the way of, or just wait until the shot is clear. Makes it a reaction if you want, if you're having cover penalties. That is actually true. You could take the hold action, hold your shot, and then basically say, I'm holding my shot until I get a clear shot. Jacob says just craft some homebrew paper airplane weapons. They can glide and take random flight patterns. Same damage as a thrown dagger, but ignores cover. Problem solved. I'm not sure if you're talking about in-game or out of game, Jacob, but I like it. Profit Roll says, or have the ally move as a reaction. I don't think they could move as a reaction unless they have an ability that lets them, like the Bard ability. There's a Bard ability that lets you, I can't remember what it's called now, but it basically you roll a d6. It gives up to like your charisma modifier's worth of allies, double temporary HP equal to the d6, and they can take a reaction to move their speed, and then they cannot incur attacks of opportunity, which is pretty lit. And I know that because I'm playing a Williams game. I'm playing a Minotaur Bard named Grom Izek. He's lawful evil. Very, very cool. He's a support character. Into the Wind says, half cover if an obstacle blocks at least half. The obstacle might be a low wall, a large piece of furniture, a narrow tree trunk, or a creature, whether that creature is an enemy or a friend. So it's on page 74 of the 2014 basic rules. Gotcha. Okay, so it was officially a 5e thing. I'm curious about the 2024 rules, if they changed it. But that is legitimate. That's legitimate. Jacob, it sounds like, or Stephen, I'm sorry, Stephen Lewis, it sounds like you might be right. And those of you who are in favor of the giving cover to the enemy creature, it sounds like you may be right according to the rules. KR Dragon, or I'm sorry, Narf says, don't underestimate the comedy of a friendly taking an arrow in the butt cheek. True. Very true. KR Dragon 06 says, ooh, can a target who is grappling another creature use that creature as a shield or cover against ranged attacks? Seems pretty reasonable. I agree that does sound reasonable. Prophet Roll says, I don't think an ally in the way should give cover 100% of the time. John says, I think any miss should have a chance to hit the friendly. In that situation, I do too. I think that adds flavor, and I think it's realistic. Hot Dice says, I thought you had to be a size category lower to use a character as cover. That might be true, actually. All right, so we've come up on 30 minutes here. Steven says, having the target get a cover bonus also makes the rogue steady aim feature pretty sweet. See, that's true. I hate to take away from features like that by just arbitrarily putting, home. Like, so if I'm going to make a ruling that's going to take away from cool stuff a character has that they invested in, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take away from cool stuff other characters have. So the rogue steady aim is another example of that. Into the Wind says CRPG Solista, which is based on the 2014 SRD, implements that cover mechanic as written. The 2024 halfling can hide using a medium creature as cover. That's awesome. Halflings are just awesome. Hot Dice, that's for hiding, John says. KR Dragon says, sorry, not as cover, but can hide behind them, basically. Well, if you're hiding behind them, then shouldn't they be sheltered from arrows? That seems reasonable to me. All right. With that being said, that's going to be a wrap. I have to get back to work. I'll talk about this for like 3 hours if I'm not careful. But hey, thank you all so much for joining in on this conversation with me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. Great suggestion in the Discord. I got this suggestion from the Discord. Join the Discord if you haven't done it already. But hey, everyone have a great day. Have a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday with the next live. Roll some D100s for me this weekend and have a great time. Talk to y'all later.